Alright, so now we're on the computer. We're going to dive straight in and really get clear on how we can apply each one of these steps to you and really start feeling we can move forward in your training. So ultimately what we want to do is show you how this 4-step system has helped hundreds of men get back in great shape. They're dropping the gut, they're feeling strong again in their body, and ultimately their body's no longer letting them down. I mean, making sure that within the body you have, the only vehicle you have in this life, you actually feel confident in your own skin. It's not making you feel uncomfortable in the work clothes. You're able to do shit in the weekends you want to do, and ultimately it's just not holding you back from the man you want to be. So ultimately this is the roadmap we're going to go through. First step is to build clarity around where you're actually going. What are we aiming to achieve? Step 2, build your base, and this is a massively misunderstood step that will really set up success for the rest of the phases. Step 3 is knowing how to track, and track effectively, because people are usually looking at the wrong metrics to what quality really is. And then step 4 ultimately will be momentum. And what do I mean by momentum? And this is a big part that I want to really dive onto, and ultimately what my whole framework is designed around, because if you can understand this momentum cycle and know how to utilize it for you, you're really going to learn how to work with your body and listen to your body, because ultimately with a lot of high achievers, a lot of driven men, I have to act as the brake pedal a lot of the time, learn how to be effective and do less to get more results. Ultimately, you've got so much on your plate, there's so much going on that we don't want to have to spend hours in the gym and throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. We want to make sure that we're spending the time on the stuff we know is moving us forward, we're feeling great in the process, and we know where we are in the cycle to really make sure we move forward, and we have a plan, we have steps in place to know that we're moving forward without breaking down, without injuring ourselves, and without feeling like we're hitting plateau after plateau. Okay, so understanding these 4 phases is essentially the detail I want to dive into today. Without wasting any time, we're going to really make sure that you get clear on these and how you can apply it to you. So let's show you right into step 1. What is clarity, and how is this going to be an important step, and why is this one of my 4 and really being able to move forward? And ultimately it's because most men are stuck in the stories. They're stuck in not knowing where they are and owning the facts of where you are right now. And you'll know by now I'm a no bullshit approach, making sure that if you know that you need help, you know that you're stuck with where you're at, it's ultimately understanding what makes you stuck, why are you where you are, because a big part of my coaching process is making sure we learn with that where you're at right now, what's working, what's not, and how do we move forward from where you are. So constantly feeling like you're stuck in this process is ultimately something I want to build up with this, because we want to make sure there's some real commitment and drive behind what you do. And ultimately this should I or should I not is where most people get stuck. And I've found this time and time again when I've run into, I've been a member of multiple gyms, and it even becomes a question of like, oh, which one should I go? And then you end up not going to either. And it could be work, it could be family, it could be all the other commitments that you have on your plate. And how do you set this time aside to make sure that it's not putting stress on relationships, your work, and everything else, and make sure you can get it in, you've got that investment for yourself, and making sure you can prioritize that time. You don't have a lack of time, you have a lack of priority of your own body. And this is how we're going to get past it, because 99% is a bitch and 100% is a breeze. How can we find that time in your day that you can allocate like it's a business appointment, like it's it's your wedding, to make sure you turn up to it every day and make sure you have that ability to commit to what you're doing. Really make sure that stepping up and putting yourself as an investment, as a priority in your list becomes a massive part in you being able to show up as the man you want to be able to see and feel respect for the people around you, because you respect your own bloody body. And ultimately, whether this becomes a shift we need to make around what is really that goal going to be, how we're going to drive that goal to make this a new priority, rather than just constantly fighting and umming and ahhing of where we're going to go. So the positive focus needs to be the goal rather than negative. So rather than being like, I need to stop being this way, I need to drop this 10 kilos, I don't feel good in my own skin, what can I do to make this a positive? How do I want to show up as a man I want to be? How can I feel great on the beach next time I'm there? How can I go on a bike ride next weekend and feel like my fitness isn't holding me back? How can I do these things and not feel like my lower back's going to pop every time I try to lift something because I've lost that strength I used to have? Really starting to build a level of vision around what that is. And association matters on this, guys. Really making sure that you step up and show that you've got a vision to what you're actually working towards, and start to put so much of a positive association to what you're doing, rather than I can't do this or I have to do this, and really start to enjoy this process and enjoy the man you're becoming in this process of really improving your body and ultimately improving your life. So I wasn't going to spend long on this, but ultimately building that grand vision, really understanding what you're working towards rather than what you're running away from, and build that why that really lights a fire under your ass, gets you up every day knowing that you're improving and becoming the man you want to be. Okay, step 2 is this base, and really understanding that through this is the goal of making sure that there's more to it than just sets and reps. We're not doing it with doing the macros and dumbbells goal. We're trying to make sure that stress, sleep, gut, and movement are your biggest aspects. It's these 4 quadrants that you really need to take into account. And if you're just focusing on what's happening in the gym, but you're not taking into account that you're only sleeping 5 hours a night, or you're feeling sluggish when you wake up, or the way you eat is making you dip and run out of energy in the afternoon, these are matters that really need to be taken into consideration to feel like you can move forward. And this is why stepping back and looking at this a little more intelligently really allows you to work with your body rather than against it. So there's a couple of strategies we can put in here to make sure that with your gut, you're actually absorbing foods you feel great on. You're not just choosing these typical health foods or bodybuilding foods that are causing more inflammation and more making you feel more tired and lethargic than you need to be. The stress side of things, how can we put things in place to mitigate a response to what we're doing, or put things in place to make sure we're not necessarily making our life easier, but we're having a better approach to how we deal with these situations, or whether it be a work, home, or whatever else. With sleep, knowing that we can put some things into your lifestyle to make sure your sleep's improving ultimately, making sure that you're having a dark room, you're having certain protocols before you go to bed to make sure your quality is there. It's not about just getting 8 hours. As with training, it's not just the time you put in the gym, it's making sure that there's a quality around what you're actually doing there. And movement in the gym, same thing. It's not just banging out tons of reps. We've got to know, how can we put that tension on the muscle we're trying to train? How can we ultimately get as much effective stimulus out of what we're trying to do with the training, as opposed to just slinging weights around and leaving the gym not knowing if we've really done enough. We want to get rid of this niggling feeling that there's something left to give, and really making sure that to be able to move forward, we can put these steps in place to really feel like we're contracting muscles hard. We're really moving forward with that training and really enjoying the process because we can see that momentum building. So ultimately, if we can build this control, we can build this quality around movement, we're going to get rid of sore joints, we're going to get rid of muscle imbalances, and ultimately we're going to start to understand exercise. For us, we're not jamming ourselves into exercises that we don't fit. So getting rid of the sluggish energy, getting rid of the stubborn body fat, and obviously the recovery that's diminished when your nutrition and your stress is taken into account. When we start to feel like our body's running along and it's being effective again, we can really start to feel like we're a well-oiled machine, really moving forward again with our training, because we have these basic health steps in place. We're not dragged down by these anchors of stress and shitty food choices and sleep patterns that are ultimately setting us up for failure before we've even stepped foot in the gym. So making the shift here is really making sure that we know what to focus on. Really make sure that the shift is in quality over quantity, making sure that to spend 30 minutes in the gym to know that it's effective, we can put these steps in place and know that we've hit it every time. We've got a definitive goal that we're trying to do. We're walking into the gym with a real outcome to drive behind, and we're going to dive into that with step 3. But ultimately what we're looking for here is to take the time to internalize movements, really make sure that we learn ability to maximize contraction, know how to move with what we're doing, set ourselves up to exercise properly so we don't have muscle imbalances, we aren't smashing up joints in the process, we're aligning movements to really fit us. We feel great each time, and we can feel like we're moving forward. And we're eating foods that we feel great on. We have the energy before, and we can recover, and we're enjoying the process because we're not just sitting there eating rabbit food or health foods that are making us feel worse. Our recovery is good. We're eating more because our metabolism is higher, and we're burning fat off in the process because we have some muscle that's really allowing us to feel powerful, have performance in the gym, and how that shows in the rest of our life is ultimately making sure that it's not just about training, right? It's how can we step up and really allow training serve the rest of our life and really allow us to be the man we want to be. So this idea of movement over reps and weight, how can we improve movement, maximize our quality around movement so that reps and weight become a tool to move forward, but they're not the be all and end all. And this will stop so many plateaus and so much confusion around why you're stuck. Your body wants to make it easier. So ultimately, if we can learn a way to really direct that tension and have control over how our body moves rather than just letting it make up its mind, we'll get rid of these imbalances, we'll get rid of these niggling injuries to really feel like we can move forward. So building this muscle control and ultimately putting that machine back into with the 98 octane, making sure we're performing at a very high level and we're running like a very smooth, well-oiled machine. So step 3, we want to track it. We want to make sure that we have metrics in place that really allow us to know what quality is and know that we're looking beyond just sets and reps, because we're kind of, like I mentioned before, we're going to be constantly fighting plateaus if all we focus on is weight. It's one variable at our disposal, and we want to make sure we can start to look into those other 5. So what are they, and how can we really make sure that when we go into the gym, we need to make sure we have a plan. If you walk into the gym without a plan, you've already failed. You don't know what's moving forward. You don't know what should be tracked, and ultimately we need to make sure sure that the biggest part of lack of motivation, lack of direction with what you're doing is knowing that every time you work in the gym, you have an exact goal and outcome that you're there to achieve. So making sure that what we're looking for here is if there's any lack of confidence around what you're doing or just uncertainty when you leave the gym, that horrible feeling like I don't know if I've moved forward, I don't really know if I did enough to feel like I'm progressing, we want to make sure that this plan really eliminates all of that, and making sure that beyond plateaus, it's not just trying to put more weight in the bar and think that's progress, because ultimately if we're seeing the weight go up but the imbalances are getting worse, our joints are still hurting, and we're not able to drop the body fat in the process, then we turn into a powerlifter, and there's going to be imbalances, there's going to be a big gut, and it becomes very specialized towards that sport where you've got to be happy with putting 0.25 of a kilo on a week. And if that's your goal, if that's your sport, then fine. But if you want to just feel great and powerful in your own skin, feel like you're moving forward in training, and you're not having to spend hours in the gym knowing how to get that little extra gram out of your workout, we need to make sure that we're able to step up and really know that we're being effective, we're spending as little time as possible to get the maximum result. And that's not in a lazy way at all, it's knowing that we're being intelligent with how we approach this to really make sure we're squeezing every little bit out of that lemon to really feel like we can move forward. So feeling in control is the big one here, making sure that we're mastering our body, really feeling like we can move forward. We're confident with what we're doing because we have a plan, we have an outcome that we're in there to achieve, and we go in with a mission. Okay, so a little overview on that is making sure a big part of this is starting with tempo. Okay, and this is a big part of our first variable we teach, which is tension, knowing how to really put more tension on the muscle to maximize this muscle breakdown, maximize the afterburn effect, to burn more fat, to really understand how to move forward. And knowing that a big part of everybody's lack of progress, everybody's lack of ability to move forward with their training, confusion around why they're stuck, is because tempo is one of the biggest underlying factors of training that everybody misses. I guarantee that 9 out of 10 of you that have gone through a program recently have found that their tempos is just not even in the program. Like, here's the sets, reps, and the exercise you're doing, and here's a way of making it look cool. But how do I set this up for me with that base, understanding how to move? And two, how do I maximize this exercise to really make sure I'm moving forward by knowing what part of the range, part of the movement that I'm trying to really emphasize, to really moving forward. For example, if you're lowering that weight down slowly, we're getting a lot more muscle breakdown. There's going to be a lot more mechanical stress on what we're doing. If we're getting a lot of power on the way up, there's a lot more muscle contraction and overall calorie expenditure. So we can really change our ability to make it more fat burning, more muscle breakdown, or just nervous system strength based work by manipulating the same exercise but just adjusting the tempo. And knowing how these 6 variables are really going to play a count into how to move forward. Okay, so to go through them, to really make sure you understand how these are applied, and what I really teach in the program to know how you put them in steps and put them in place, is that we have tension, we have intensity or weight, we have volume, we have density, we have frequency, and we have a lactic acid. How can we accumulate more lactic acid in muscle? And this is a really, really effective one, and again overlooked, knowing how to burn more fat with workouts in the gym without having to go for a run, without having to do all these weird circuits. We're trying to make sure that with effective muscle contraction, really knowing how to move forward with exercise, we can burn more fat with less time in the gym, but allowing this afterburn effect to really take effect and allow 24, 48 hours after to really burn fat. And I don't want to leave that one out. I want to give you a quick example on what that really means, because if you drive a car from point A to point B, you burn a certain amount of fuel, right? When you turn it off the other end, that's the fuel you burn. That's like you on the cardio machine, looking at how many calories you burn, getting off and not burning anything extra from there on. If you do an effective workout like this, you start to understand how to manipulate tempos, lactic acid threshold, and all this within the workout. What it's like is driving that car from point A to point B as fast as you can, and then leaving it running for 24 to 48 hours afterwards. Imagine how powerful that is, to know that what we're doing in the gym is it's serving us long after we've finished that workout. So we're not having to worry about counting our steps or whatever else that are pretty arbitrary metrics of really being able to burn fat. It's trying to understand how what we're doing in the gym is really affecting us long term and allowing us to eat more food, perform at a high level, feel energetic, and still burn fat in the process. So ultimately, the step 3 summary is knowing that these 6 variables we have at play really allow us to track and control things effectively, so we have quality with what we're doing. We're not just trying to look at the weight on the bar and think that's ultimately progress. And then we're starting with tempo. We're understanding how this is a massive metric that's missed in knowing how to move forward with training, and ultimately understand quality within workouts. Okay, now here's a biggie. I hope you're ready for this one, team, because this is step 4. Momentum is going to be coming back to the cycle of what we discussed at the start and understanding those 4 quadrants. So like we mentioned here, starting with that movement phase, building into the strength element, specializing in the either fat loss or muscle groups that we need to bring up, and then ultimately knowing how to maximize that deload period. And as you're starting to go through and you've seen those first couple steps, you're probably starting to understand this process a little bit more, because movement in this whole recalibration standpoint is obviously the base. Knowing how to move properly, eat effectively, and recalibrate the stress and sleep scenario so that we're waking up with the energy, we're good at starting with a good solid health base. We move into steps 2, which is a strength and build through, so adding a little more explosive power, adding a bit more progression behind what we're doing by putting through ranges that allow us to maximize our ability to contract muscles hard, really stimulate that nervous system a little bit more, and make sure with the movements we're not shifting our movements in order to move more weight. We have our ability to know and track what quality really is and be able to build that process up. With momentum, we can start to look at how we can maximize those fat principles. We know how we can adjust the variables of training to know that we can shift those weak muscle groups into strong, really make sure that body balances out. We have this level of symmetry, we have this level of functional movement that goes beyond just doing silly movements. It's knowing how to understand how your body moves so that you're mobile, you're strong, and you're athletic in the shit you want to do. And then step 4, which is a big phase, is understanding when and why we should deload, knowing that fatigue and stress and our environmental factors should always play a part in how we approach training, and knowing this is a big aspect of maximizing every one of these other phases, because we need to know how to deload and we need to know when. And the specialization phase, or the first 2 phases of this, could take anywhere from 8 to 20 weeks for people to really push through phases, see that they're really progressing, getting to a point where work's running down, simply training's running them down, or other aspects are coming into that, to know that we need to switch off certain systems and dive into that deload. So if we're overloading this muscle damage or this metabolic system because we've been really focused on muscle breakdown and burning a lot more fat, now we can focus on nervous system stuff and really learn how that strength component can serve us really well in this period to drop the information down, allow these other systems to recover, while we allow strength and everything else around performance of our workouts to still go up, to still improve, but we're allowing those other energy systems in our body to recover and ultimately recalibrate so we can come back down to movement phase and start that process again. So we've got this constant momentum with what we're doing. We're not running into roadblocks the whole way through, because we know what phase we're in, we're moving forward, and we have an objective with each one of these phases, knowing that we're just massively driving momentum through the roof because we know how to move forward and we know what phase is really serving us best. Okay, so riding this wave, really understanding how to move forward, is not having this constant stop-start battle of knowing what part of you is going to make sure you can move forward, and knowing if I'm moving forward, knowing if training is even working. And this is why you end up, going away from training for a couple of years, or starting and stopping the whole time and not really seeing a way to level that up, to really feel like we can find that momentum that you used to have, that you lost when you left uni or you left school, and just shit hit the fan when life really had so many more requirements of you. You need to take into account how can you keep your training on top, keep your body on track, but in a way that you have a plan that serves you and you're not having to spend hours in the gym to achieve it. So increase the upside, decrease the downside. Any investor will know this is a massive benefit in knowing that what we're putting in, we're getting more out, and we're making sure that every bit we put in the gym, we're making sure we're maximizing our time, we're confident with what we're doing, and it's really allowing us to feel like we're moving forward again. And ultimately, how does that project as the man you want to be in the rest of your life, right? If you can do more in the morning before everyone else wakes up, you've challenged your body, you've challenged your mind, and you've allowed yourself to really sweat and breathe and move, you're going to really show up sharp and really effective as the man you want to be for the rest of the day. So ultimately, when you listen, you learn. When you start to have an awareness around how your body moves, around how you're feeling, you start looking a little bit beyond just the numbers on your tracking sheet. You start to look at how this framework involves so much more of a holistic, intelligent approach around having a confidence around a framework that really serves you, that really allows you to think a little deeper into how this looks at the bigger picture and how you can make sure you keep moving forward with what you're doing. Okay, so a little bit of an overview on what you're doing is looking at how this can be an art of training and not just a spreadsheet. It's looking at this awareness factor of how you need to move forward and how it's going to really serve you by understanding that cycle. And the key to this is ultimately longevity. We're getting results with what we're doing, and ultimately fulfillment in our training, our body, and our life. Making sure that what we're doing in the gym is serving us in a way that projects the man we want to be, allows us to be the man we want to be. When we leave the gym, we feel confident in our own body, and our energy is at a level that allows us to be sharp and proficient with what we want to do. Okay, so step 4, just a little bit rundown, is making sure we learn this cycle, really understand what momentum really is and how we can achieve it for longer, so we're not just hitting that brick wall and stopping and starting the whole time. Learning how to build out this framework for you, understanding how and why you're in certain parts of these phases and how to shift, how to move forward and get yourself unstuck to really step it up. And confidence in motion, knowing that if you're progressing, if you're moving forward, you really will show up as a man you want to be because you feel fulfilled, you feel like you're progressing, and how that allows you to show up as a man you want to be will ultimately change the way you live your life. Okay, so quick recap on those 4 phases is knowing that you're building the solid base, you're starting with a strong foundation of movement, but you need to start with that vision first. You need to know that when you're building a base, when you're building through these progressions, you need to know that the vision you have is positive. You know that it's reinforcing you to enjoy the process that you go through and really becoming the man you want to be in the process. It's about the character you build, not the goal at the end of the day. Knowing that climbing of the mountain is ultimately the process that allows you to reap the rewards of the character at the top. And track and adjust, looking beyond just the sets and reps and weight on the bar, looking at what that quality is, knowing how to adjust with the variables you have at your disposal to really feel like we can keep moving forward, building that progress, building that strength and momentum with what we're doing. And then riding the momentum cycle, the biggest part of this that really allows it to tie it all together and know that we can constantly feel like we're moving forward with training, enjoying training again because we know we're progressing. It's really serving us far beyond just our own body and allowing us to really feel confident in our own skin again. Okay, so how does this really differ? I'd imagine you're starting to really see this by now, but ultimately it's identifying the holes in the boat, not just plugging them up and trying to carry on, not just about hard work. We're looking at this, stepping back from a more holistic approach and knowing how it's working with your body rather than against you. Really just starting to be in tune, build this level of awareness that everybody's missing and thinking that the key is in another spreadsheet. Knowing that if we look at the bigger picture, we understand and optimize how to move, we can really step up your game, really build your confidence around training and feel like we can progress again. Okay, so here's a couple testimonials over some of the clients that have gone through this program recently, really starting to understand how this framework applies to them. And it was these guys have been on and off for years. They've been, there's a good solid amount of training in there, but they all took something out of this that was far beyond just the training in the gym. You see how the training side, obviously they were improving their workouts. They felt better than they ever had before, even with less weight. They're understanding this tempo component. With the mental aspect, the anxiety, the depression was starting to drop. They're really seeing how this elevated mood, this elevated energy really allows them to show up as a man they want to be, improving the outlook and really be the person that they constantly have seen the vision they wanted to be, but they felt like their food and their training was constantly in the way of this. And you can see how when you're having foods that really serve you, that you absorb properly and you feel great on, now you're starting to get a whole new level of outlook. You're starting to feel great in your own body, and ultimately this fulfillment starts to double. Okay, the community aspect, obviously it's amazing when you've got people bouncing off each other. They're on that same path. They're driven men looking to really improve what they're doing, and within 1 or 2 weeks they're starting to really see how much that's changing the way they think about training, ultimately their whole outlook. We've had clients that have been here they've trained for 5, 10, 15 years, and we're completely stripping back what they think they know at training and building this back up in a way that allows them to move forward again, allows them to enjoy training because they're not whacking their head against the wall. They're starting to understand what's happening. And on the right here, it's starting to build in. This man has got a bit of muscle on him. He's really starting to thrive in his training. He's really enjoying what he's doing. But the big part I love about this is that he's got a job that demands a lot of him. He's still getting his training in, but we shifted the way he thought about, again, that quality component of it, to know that he could actually eat more, to make sure the foods were actually serving him properly, so he was getting a great level of performance out of his training. He was still able to feel mentally sharp and energetic at work without having to drop down a rabbit food and feel like he was dieting and starving in that process. So what's really next from here? Ultimately, if you haven't already, we need to book that one-on-one coaching call. And ultimately what we're going to do with this is to apply this whole path to you. How can we put these 4 steps in place? Ultimately, know where you're stuck, know what that vision ultimately is, know what parts of your base are missing. So look at those 4 quadrants, know if it's going to be sleep, is it going to be lifestyle, so stress, is it going to be your nutrition or your training that's really holding you back? And it could be each one of those, but what are those 1 to 2 steps that you need to do right now to really feel like you can move forward, apply this framework to you and get very clear on what needs to move forward. So we're going to walk you through this full blueprint. We're going to start to give you a real idea of how this applies to you, so that when you step off that call, you have the absolute vision and clarity around what needs to happen to move forward. You have access to my members library. You start to look in all these videos to understand tempo, understand how to move properly, what shifts you should be making in nutrition, what sort of foods you should be eating to really feel like you can move forward. But the biggest part is knowing how we can apply this to you. So by getting on a call, going through this process, knowing why and where you're stuck, we can really start to move forward. And if you are a great fit, if you do find you're a motivated man that really wants to step this up, really get his body back in control, then you'll be invited to work with me as well. Go through this coaching process, be part of the community, and get access to all the resources to really step up your training, really be proud of your body again, really feel like you're moving forward with training that's serving you as a man you want to be. So that's all I've got for you today. That's all I wanted to touch on, but that gives you a really good understanding of the framework that we take all of our clients through, that's just completely shifting the way they thought about the industry, they thought about training, they thought about progressing, because we're shifting your approach to make sure you've got those steps in place to really bring a strong foundation. You're not dragged down and you're not starting in a place of disadvantage by knowing that your gut's on track, knowing that you've got great energy and you've got these bits to serve you, to know that as we build through this process, we're building momentum, we're enjoying the process, and we're being the man we want to be. So I look forward to getting on that call with you shortly. Make sure that we can apply this process to you and ultimately get clear on what your next steps are. So really, really great to have you on this call, and we'll talk to you soon.